Hi, this is Matt Baney, managing editor of the Lewiston Tribune, and this is the Lewiston Tribune Podcast, episode number 9. I'm joined by Anthony Kuipers, who is a reporter for the Moscow-Pullman Daily News. Anthony, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining. And today, Anthony and I are going to talk about the Moscow murders that happened on November 13th, 2022. 2 years ago now, and Anthony has covered the murders since they happened. Anthony, so it's just this week, it was the 2-year anniversary of the murders. 2 years, does it feel like it's been 2 years? Longer, shorter to you?
No, it's kind of flown by for me, but I know that it's still weighs heavily on the minds of the community and the University of Idaho students here in Moscow.
And one thing you covered on the anniversary, on the 13th, was a vigil at the Healing Garden in Moscow. What was the vigil like?
So it was pretty incredible to see because, it was middle of the week, the weather was bad, it was rainy and cold. I wasn't sure what to expect, but when I got there, hundreds of students showed up, and it was a candlelight vigil. They were able to write notes to the victims and leave them there at the memorial. The memorial was built by University of Idaho students in memory of the 4 University of Idaho students killed in November 2022, as well as other vandals who have passed away. It's a really beautiful memorial, and it was a really great, really touching vigil on Wednesday.
Right. Of course, so it's been 2 years, and yet no official resolution to the case yet. As I'm sure everybody knows who's listening, Bryan Kohberger, who was a WSU graduate student, has been arrested and is charged with the murders. The case against Kohberger, where does it stand right now? When is a trial expected to begin, Anthony?
A trial is expected to begin August 11th of 2025. It's been, the trial has been pushed back multiple times, so we'll see if that timeline still holds up. But yeah, it's supposed to start August 2025 and end somewhere around November 7th, 2025.
And people have probably spotted this, but it's no longer going to be in Latah County. It will be held in Ada County in Boise. Can you kind of explain why the trial ended up getting moved to Ada County?
Yeah, so the defense, Bryan Kohberger's attorneys, they successfully argued to move the trial to Ada County because in their minds, Ada County is more likely to provide a unbiased jury pool, which, given all the media attention that this case has drawn, it'll be pretty tough to find completely unbiased jury members anywhere, but they felt like Boise and Ada County was more capable of providing jurors who can handle this case. Also, the other reason was that the judge felt that the Latah County Courthouse facility just wasn't able to handle the security and size of a high-profile jury trial like this. Apparently, the Ada County Courthouse is more suited to handling, a trial that's going to draw a lot of people and have a lot of security concerns.
And Anthony, you've now covered a couple of hearings remotely in Ada County in the case. Does it just from what you've observed watching the live stream of the proceedings? What is there a difference between just the setup in Ada County as compared to here in Latah County?
The setup's the same. You might notice that members of the prosecution may not be there at certain hearings. That's because if they're not planning to speak, they don't have to be there in person. They can just watch it remotely. But not a huge difference from what I could see. There's a different judge, so that's obviously a major factor. But we'll see. We'll see how this plays out. There's only so much I can kind of gauge watching the live stream. I plan to go down there one day and cover the hearings, so we'll see.
You mentioned the new judge, Stephen Hippler. So far, from what you've observed, how does he differ from John Judge here in Latah County, who had been presiding over the case?
Yeah, one thing I've noticed is that he tends to challenge the attorneys more when they're making their arguments, meaning that he'll interrupt them if they make a point that isn't clear or that needs clarification. He'll play the devil's advocate and sort of force them to kind of just broaden their argument and go into more detail. And I guess he's more, it seemed like Judge would just kind of allow them to talk, but Hippler will kind of stop them in their tracks if there's a point that he wants to get them to talk about and to get them to explain better. Okay.
The most recent hearing was over the death penalty, and it is, as we speak, it's still being pursued by the prosecution. What arguments, kind of sum up that last hearing for us, if you could, Anthony. What was kind of being argued in that last one?
Yeah, so Kohberger's attorneys are trying to get the judge to strike down the death penalty in this case before the trial begins. They made a lot of different arguments. They even argued that the death penalty should be abolished in Idaho. They also made the argument that Idaho hasn't been successful recently in carrying out the death penalty. They brought up the case of Thomas Creech, an Idaho inmate convicted of murder who was supposed to be put to death earlier this year. The medical team had trouble finding a vein for the lethal injection. So that's been delayed and put off. And Kohberger's attorneys are using that as an example of, maybe Idaho isn't able to carry out the death penalty, and why should Kohberger sit on death row while they try to sort that out. They also argued that, the specific charges against Kohberger don't warrant a death penalty, that maybe the grand jury that indicted him maybe didn't get clear instructions on how those pertain to a capital crime. And so that's the Kohberger's argument. Basically, the prosecution is saying it's too soon to strike down the death penalty. If he is ever put to death, it'll likely be a decade or more from now. By then, Idaho could have a better means of carrying out the death penalty. So that's kind of where we stand right now.
And as we speak, the judge has not ruled on that matter. Is that right?
That's right. We're waiting on a written opinion from him to be filed. So that'll be the next step in this case.
So, Anthony, it's now been more than 2 years, just more than 2 years since the murders occurred. And it still won't be for another 10, 11 months until, well, not quite that long, but at least 9 months until the trial actually begins. Have you sensed a frustration from maybe perhaps not even those involved, but just the community in general that we're still waiting for a trial to take place?
Oh, sure. I think people are seeking closure, and the way the trial is scheduled now, it won't end until early November, which is right around the 3-year anniversary of the crime itself. That's a long time. And I know certainly the families and family members and friends of the victim want this trial to happen and to end it so that they can get some closure. And I have a feeling that the community around Moscow feels the same way.
Do you sense, of course, this, when the murders happened, it was national news, even international news. Has perhaps the attention of the national media and the international media maybe waned a little bit over the last several months?
Yeah, that may be the case, but I'm sure it'll pick right back up when the trial starts. I think it's sort of the media attention kind of goes up and down based on the news that happens. So if a new hearing, or if there's a major decision in the case, or if the trial begins, I think we'll see increased media attention during those times.
Mm-hmm. You live in Moscow, of course, and can you describe how just living in the town and going about your day, I'm sure there was a pall over the community in November of 2022, particularly when no suspect had been arrested. Has that maybe that feeling, has that perhaps worn off some? Is life back to normal on the Palouse now?
It certainly seems that way. I think people are maybe more conscious about safety and security. I think Moscow is a place that where before all this happened, a lot of people would leave their doors unlocked, or they maybe wouldn't take extra precautions to stay safe. I'm sure that has changed since the murders happened. But as far as the mood, it does feel like it's back to normal. But I think the vigil on Wednesday for the 2-year anniversary showed that it still weighs heavy on the minds of certainly the University of Idaho community, as well as I'm sure that the rest of the community in Moscow.
Mm-hmm. Anthony, back 2 years ago when the murders happened, do you remember where you were, what you were doing when you first heard about this?
Yeah, so I was off the day that it happened. I was off work, and so I was at home, and I started getting text messages, and I heard from, I believe I heard from you. You gave me a heads up this was happening, and immediately I started checking the news, and I think initially, if I remember right, we heard there was one victim, and then suddenly it grew to 4 victims, and then it became clear this is going to be just a major event in Moscow and the surrounding community.
Mm-hmm. As a reporter, what's it like covering this case? Is it the sort of thing that you find yourself thinking about even when you're not working, or are you able to forget it, not dwell on it when you're not on duty?
Well, I can tell you, I don't think I've ever followed a story this long before. I've worked at the Daily News for a decade now, but I've never covered a case like this. Certainly, I've never covered something as high profile like this. So it's been a learning experience for me, but it's something that I've followed closely for over 2 years now, and again, that's a first for me, having to follow a story that long. But I'm happy to do it because I know obviously people care about this story.
Mm-hmm. Are you in the camp, though, that would be eager to see a resolution to this case?
Oh, certainly, yeah. I think this has to end at some point, and like I said, the trial's going to happen next year. It's likely going to end around the 3-year anniversary. 3 years is a long time. I think we all want to see how this is going to end.
Okay, Anthony, so the trial is scheduled to start in August of next year. What do you think the chances are of it actually beginning as scheduled right now?
Well, it's tough to say because it's already been delayed multiple times, largely because, as the defense argues, there's just a mountain of evidence that they have to sort through. But, I think they've been given enough time, both sides, both the prosecution and the defense. I think I'm more confident that this will be the firm trial date and it won't be delayed. But I could be wrong. But I feel like we will see this trial happen on schedule.
All right. Anthony, thanks for the insight on the Moscow murder case. And, of course, you'll continue to cover all the developments as they come, and you can follow Anthony's reporting in the Daily News and the Tribune. And thanks for joining us for the Lewiston Tribune Podcast, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.